Welcome back to the Silo Podcast. In this episode, me and Gavin talk about the importance and value of podcasting. In this season of lives for both me and Gavin, we've tried to be more intentional with the pace of our lives. From podcasting, we see this relational, this conversational piece of media that has just been so valuable for our lives, and we want to share with you how we think it can impact you as well. Can't wait for you to listen.
Yeah, you gotten used to it?
Yeah. I feel like I'm like
Me too. Bro, did I?
Sorry.
No, go ahead. You were talking.
I just have such a flat, like just pristine ring.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have a ton of detail. So like when I scratch it up, you notice it a lot more.
Do you have like
I have like a silicone one if I wanted to like do like outdoor work and stuff.
Gotcha.
But I mean, I can get this buff for free anyway. So.
Oh, you really?
Yeah.
That's
It's like a
awesome.
family run store that we got ours from. So like they take care of us.
That's cool.
I don't know.
That's cool.
What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying like I don't know, like you were talking about how like you've like done that, but like I accidentally cracked my windshield because I forgot. I forgot that I had the ring on.
What'd you do? You like hit your windshield?
Yeah, so we were in the car, Jess and I, on our way to church, and for Fusion. I think it was speaking on rest. And Jess, like when she gets bit by mosquitoes, she like swells up pretty badly. And so like often I'm like, I'll go full like, I'm
go full
protecting
killer,
it. Like I don't care. Like whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. It was on the windshield inside of like we parked or we were at like a light or something, and I was like, there it is. So I went like I'm so used to doing it with my left hand with bugs because I'm more dominant with my right with driving. So I hit it. And I forgot that I had the ring on, and it made like a little like star crack in the windshield.
What?
Yeah.
You think a windshield would be like more protective
that's
than
what I
a
thought.
human going like this?
Yeah, I didn't even hit it that hard.
Yeah.
And it like
just
little
strong.
like 1
You're just
inch
strong.
crack.
I remember you sent me a voice memo and you're like, bro, just got your message. I was just doing push-ups, so I wasn't able to like pick up like your call earlier or whatever. I'm like, bro's getting swole over here.
No.
Now, next thing you know, he's over here just going like this and breaking windshields.
Well, they generally like the ring, bro. Like that's why I was curious.
It's the power of marriage.
Yeah.
Breaking windshields.
I was like, no. But like we got it replaced.
Was it you replaced the whole windshield?
I had to, because if it's on the driver's side,
that's
it's
a
like
hazard.
it's an intense hazard. Even if they like fill it up and fix it.
So it wasn't even a scrape. Like
No,
it was like a full
it was like
like a rock hit
maybe
the
like
highway.
like centimeter or two dent in the inside of the windshield.
That's wild.
And I had to like get it fully replaced.
Yeah.
That's what I was curious of.
No,
like,
I haven't.
with your
I haven't
ring.
had the strength of marriage. Just take anyone out yet,
But
unfortunately.
like if you got like, because I don't know, like mine's a thicker, like heavier ring. I don't know how like thick.
Mine has a good weight to it, but like it's not super like you can play with it, but my hand is small in general, so like.
Bro, I don't even know if I can get mine off without like.
I feel like I like play with mine all the time. Don't
I
hurt
might have
yourself
to get,
on
like,
camera.
There we go.
Oh yeah, that's a beefy boy.
Yeah, it's a beefy boy.
I love it though. Like I wish I had that kind of weight on mine.
It's so much fun because like then I can just like
oh yeah,
and have fun with
the
it.
tinkering is unreal.
Yeah, but it's heavy, and I think I might have gone like a size a little small, but
Really?
just because it's so hard to get off.
I was gonna say like 2 now. I realize when my hands get super swollen.
Yeah.
Or like I get like
If I eat
hiker's
salty
hand or
things
whatever.
or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
Like when you go hiking and it just turns into sausages kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I notice immediately like, oh, I'm a little warm in the hand today. Huh?
Yeah, and it's something that I'm like, but
I don't know.
yeah, but this is.
I love
was
it. The
curious.
build quality is
Yeah, family. It was like a business that they like whole thing is they like eco-sourced everything. So this is actual wood, recycled wood, like the same as my guitar,
Right.
my acoustic guitar. And this is like a thick, durable metal, like all from like reused, recycled ingredients, which is so cool.
Perfect.
But yeah, Jess found it. I would
Really?
have never.
Oh, nice.
She was the one that chose it. She was like, "Do you like this?" And I was like, "I love that."
That's exactly. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, I remember going into the ring store, and then we'll get into the episode.
Yeah.
I remember going into the ring store, and I'm like, "Yep, that one."
Yeah.
And Katie's like, "You want to look at anything else?" I'm like, "No, I really like what's going on here, just like in my size. Like, you don't want like any like fun doodads or gizmos on it." I'm like, "No, I just want something flat, like rigid."
It's nice.
And weighted, and that did it. And she went and got hers like resized and like picked out different times, like 4 times we went in or something. And every time she's like, "Did you want to look at any other rings?" I'm like, "Nope, I got to figure it out."
That's awesome, man.
That's my one.
But yeah,
so
I love it.
I love it. That's a really cool one. And you have like silicone ones too, just in case.
Yeah. So if you ever like, you'd want another, I can always shoot over like where she got it from.
Oh yeah.
Because they had like really simple ones too, but yeah, it's cool.
I dig it. I dig it.
Likewise. But I was curious because I had to get used to it for a little bit, because I was like, I can't like this is different now when you squeeze. So
it makes me want to like get more like just ornamental rings too. I'm like, I look kind of sick doing this.
Yeah. Like you wake up and you're like, oh, and they're like,
oh yeah. I'm in the market now. Now when we go like vintage shopping, I'm like, I will look.
Yeah.
Because these are sick.
I agree. Even, and Phil Payne, his wedding ring was the lion that he wore. That like massive lion. That was his wedding ring. I didn't know that. And he just told me that he got like this like 10K carat like gold ring that has like all this and like intricate designs. And I was like, man, like who knew rings were that cool?
And you don't realize, I didn't realize it until I put this on. I'm like, I'm looking in the mirror or like I'm doing stuff.
Good.
And I'm like holding stuff. I'm like, oh,
it looks nice.
Oh, I'm a married man.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
What it'll look like to have another ring on,
Exactly.
It's so cool.
Oh, that's It really it took some getting used to. Yeah. Because it is like hard edges, so like it does kind of.
Oh, I didn't even know. Like, is it like?
No, it's not like sharp, but like after wearing it for a little bit, it can dig a little bit. But I'm like, it's part of it.
Yeah.
I'm experiencing pain. I'm into it.
Marriage requires some level of it, right?
This is the only one. I'm the only marriage pain I want to experience.
Yeah, I agree. Those like with Jess's, like because it's like shaped the way that it is, like certain areas of it like put a little bit more pressure. She was like, this is nothing. So I was like, all right, like it's just interesting. Like rings are cool. Now it makes sense why people wear them. You know?
Summary of our past 10 minutes. Rings are cool.
They are cool. Especially the weighted ones that you're like, ooh.
Yeah, when you feel it, you just know.
And like if you slug somebody with like a weighted ring, dude, 10
or
times
slug
more.
a windshield, you know it breaks.
It was so bad. Like I felt so bad. I was like, no, like why? Like I didn't even hit it that hard. Like it literally was just like, and it like.
That's whack.
But it's glass. I think in my mind I thought it was like indestructible. But it makes sense then why in movies, like when people get in like accidents, the glass shatters.
Right. Well, I mean, on like the hardness scale or whatever, I don't know exactly what your metal is, but it might rank harder than glass. You know, like
I didn't even think about that.
Where it won't scratch.
Wow.
Like,
I didn't think about that.
Right?
Yeah. Because there's certain metals.
It's like diamond is indestructible.
Yeah.
Or if you don't scratch it with another diamond or whatever. Yeah. Like on the roughness hardness scale. So like I think like gold is not really up there, but like silver might be or something.
Yeah. So I think this was like titanium.
Titanium is probably pretty up there, I imagine. But like in that scale, I would imagine it beats glass somehow. It's like rock, paper, scissors, shoot, you know? Yeah. Your titanium just happens to be glass.
Beat paper in that. Exactly. No, wait, not paper, glass. Rock beat glass in that instant. It was I just in my mind, I just always thought glass was like, there's no way. Like it's thick, it's a windshield.
You learn new things when you're married. You wouldn't have figured that out otherwise, right?
No, I wouldn't have. And it was an easy process. He was done in like 30, 40 minutes, replaced it.
Because they came to you, right? That's what Safelite is.
Yeah, you can
it's go like they have like suction cups and like,
but then they can come. And he just came up, did it. He cut out like my emissions and stuff. But and he gave it to me. And I was like, oh, sick. But yeah, he did it like it was nothing. And I think the glass that they use is like also can be used as like acoustic sound paneling. So bro, the inside of my car, like
So we can do podcasts.
It's amazing. Like Jess and I were talking, and I was like, I do not hear anything but our voices. Like this is crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's you know, industrial grade. It's all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the type of glass and the way they install it makes it sound like. So I'll be driving and I'm like, I'm in dead silence.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, your morning
anything.
silent drives, and all of a sudden it's just like
silent.
It's like that room that's completely silent, and people go insane for staying in there too long.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all that to say, if you crack your windshield, could be a good experice.
Well, that's a good segue into.
Were you recording the entire time?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. My bad.
No, what? No, stop. Welcome to the Silo Podcast. This is the intro.
Yeah, dang, I forgot. I was like,
no, it's cool. It's cool. The segue is that now it's so dead that you can record a podcast in your car. And guess what? We're talking about podcasts today. It works.
It did work.
This conversation ties into it.
It did work. Dang.
It just took a long exposition to get us to where we needed to be, which is totally worth it.
Yes. I was completely like, we haven't even started yet. And then now we are.
Now we are. Well, welcome to the podcast episode, everyone.
Welcome.
We're talking about podcasts, so you could say this is podcastception.
Yes. Two podcasters talking about podcasts while they're on a podcast that's distributed to the podcast world. Podcastception.
Anyway, that's so good. Like, I feel like we just talked off camera about podcasting.
Yes.
And I think for me this year with podcasting, I wanted to take it to a whole new level because I want to do more podcasting because I've been consuming more podcasts.
Yes.
And like the value that they've given to my life has been so like incredible. And I feel like I want to master that art. One, as like a creative, and two, as like a videographer.
Yeah.
As podcasts move to more video.
Yeah.
And so like you see in the last few episodes of this season, like they've all been video. They've all been like lit properly.
Beautifully produced by you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. And so this is no different, but we wanted to get into like the importance of podcasting. So like, I know earlier this year, we've talked about like how bad we want to like move into producing podcasts.
Yes.
And I feel like that's so like still on my mind. I'm like, I just want to buy gear to make podcasts because people have stories to tell and like knowledge to share.
Yeah.
And they're not the easiest to consume, I feel like.
No.
Like because they're so long form, it's such a deep level of understanding that you have with the people that like go in, but that's like buying into like a 7-season show. Like you know these characters well, you know what they're gonna say, but they have so much to tell and so much to like say.
Yes.
So that's where I'm at. I'm like, once like it's hard to find new podcasts, but once you do, you're like in and like you're in that story for so long.
That's so true. I didn't even think about like how difficult it actually is to find a good podcast because there's so many podcasts.
Yeah. Like, it seems saturated and it's keeping on getting more saturated, but like it's so hard to discover. Yeah. Because it's not a For You page for podcasts anymore. No.
Which would be interesting. Yeah. Because I know Spotify does that like a couple second clips of like music, but what if they did that for podcasts? Yeah. You know, if you're listening, Spotify, you know, we came up with that idea.
Like, what's your relationship to podcasts then?
Oh, man. I think we both started getting into podcasting right around the same time.
Really?
Yeah. Because I feel like we started talking about making podcasts, and then that's when we were like, well, we should probably like know our base of like what's going on. Because I was like, when it came to listening to stuff, it was only just music. Like I was like, I don't want to listen to other people talk while I'm driving. I want to be like, you know, jamming out to music and or sitting in silence. And until we started like engaging with it, I think that's when I was like, all right, I want to I like the way that this is, so I want to learn and like engage, and then by default began to like really enjoy podcasting.
You got to become a student of it, you know,
Yeah.
to understand what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. And I think we were talking about this earlier, and I didn't know that it would come in this way of the conversation, but like I think like we grow up listening to like the radio stations and like radio hosts like actually doing basically what podcasters do of like, oh, here's an intro with some music. Let's talk about our guest today. Let's like listen to some things. And so I loved that. Like I loved listening to our local radio stations as a kid of like, I want to know like what's going on. I want to know these personalities. And then that I feel like is kind of the sphere has kind of changed. And now podcasts have become like everybody and their mother either has started one, listens to one, or talks about one. It's like,
and that's a phrase that goes around so often. It's like, oh, you're just another guy with a podcast. Like you have things to say. Oh, what about it?
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting because it's like, yeah, I actually do have a podcast. So what about it? You know?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I agree. Like it's
like everyone has opinions.
Yeah. Everybody has opinions. And I think there is merit to that kind of like, well, oh, here's just another two people like making a podcast. They want their opinions heard. But I think that almost eliminates the possibility of people actually learning something, you know, because then they're like, oh, I don't want to listen to it because just everybody has another opinion. But I do, like we've talked about this before, there's incredible educational value coming out of a podcast if you find the one that is good and is not just people spewing opinions or trying to do it because it's the thing to do. I think you begin to understand the shifting, the differences between like a podcast that's there generally to educate, to encourage, etc., and then a podcast that's there like, you know, just to rifle and continue to feed into the podcast mentality.
Right.
So,
when you think of, oh, everyone has a podcast, you think of like two college dudes that have an opinion on on
politics or like
the frat
music
next door
or
anything.
Sports. Yeah.
Right. And you could say that that's worth nothing. You could say that's worth something, but like the matter is like when you are, and we'll take this back to the basics, when you don't have a following, the best way to grow a following is to provide value or education or something, you know, comedy is like maybe the three pillars there. Yeah. But to share your opinion as a nobody, say, it's tough to have people rally behind that. Yeah. That's why the culture of vlogging doesn't exist without you having a following of people that care about you and then what you do in your normal day, you know? Like I don't care about Tim down the street until he talks about his profession as a garbage man and how he actually impacts people as a garbage man and talks on a podcast about it. Yeah. And then I want to know more about his, you know, garbage man life. Yeah. So you watch his vlogs then. Yeah. So I think for those starting out, why you don't see traction is because you're not educating, like informing or like making people laugh.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think like podcasting becomes an attainable way for people to achieve those things because yes, there is, I think we're seeing the shift of like, okay, podcasters are making free versions and then there's subscription based, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. There's many spheres to it. But I think for the most part, there is a free access to like it. You can literally download Spotify or Apple on your phone and look up a podcast and you can listen to it. Like there's not necessarily I think, incredible difficulty to get to obtain to listen to it. It's I think a lot more easier than it may have been earlier. And so because of that, like educating and informing and making people laugh, and oftentimes you can learn more from people that make you laugh than people that don't. Like there's always this fear. There's always this balance between the two. But I think like it's so much easier to listen in that area rather than like unfortunately, I feel like our culture has kind of shifted away from some of the normal educational, like you go to school, you go and do this, you go and do that, which I think in inherent has its benefits. But like now it's kind of like, well, how can I learn more about what's going on in real life? Typically, I feel like you hear people talking about, engaging in those experiences, but then listening to a podcast that talks about it. Because like what better way to learn from people that actually know how to do it and hear what they have to say. So
I think there's also something to be said too that's kind of countercultural at the moment of how long they are.
Yeah.
Like it is going against the quick editing of a YouTube video or the information that happens in 30 seconds in a TikTok. Like this is
scroll value.
This is really like you're getting down and dirty. These podcasts don't need to have flashy titles or multiple camera angles, high that we have. Like
that was pretty good.
It doesn't need to have that.
That was good.
But the inherent value is the audio, and that audio doesn't need to be like cut up. Like there doesn't need to be these gaps. Like this is one of the more honest forms of media that we have right now.
I agree. I would just say I agree with that because I think it's such a good statement because I think it's interesting because even now, like you get, especially with what's going on in the world presently, excuse me. Whoa, man. Whoa. The gas is coming out. But no, I think.
See, we're keeping that in honest form of media.
Exactly. But I think like with what's going on in the world right now, news, you can read anything in the news and try to believe it. But what I'm seeing more is even like firsthand accounts of what's going on. They're turning into podcasts, and you can actually learn from those individuals without having to see, I think, the rawness of like all the information coming at you at once. Because I think you can listen to it, pause it, process, listen to it more rather than this like, this is what's going on, but then also this is what's going on, this is what's going on, this is what's going on. Like it's ultimately just like one channel that you can actually have control over how often and how little you want to listen to it, which I think has immense benefit because you watch something in 30 seconds, you're only going to see 30 seconds. Whereas this is more of like a format of like you can listen, you can watch, you can pause, you can go and search, they said this about this thing. How true is that? How not true is that? Oh, I want to learn more about this. I don't want to learn more about this. Like, oh, I've never thought about it this way. It causes you to think more and to engage more than I think like a TikTok or something else of that format. So
that's a good point because like to the visuals of it, like we're in the same vein of countercultural with not tons of editing and, jumping around and stuff. It allows you to engage less of your senses, which means you have like more like processing room. Like, sure, they might have video podcasts, but it's not interesting what's on the screen. It's still a slow paced conversation between two people. And I don't necessarily need to watch the video form to get all the information, hopefully. So like I can be just as educated and be taking in the news and processing it in my head as I'm hearing it instead of watching news footage plus the audio overlay and blah, blah, blah.
And the emotional aspects of different things too. I think this is like a completely like what you're getting on, which I think is super important, is like it makes you slow down enough to actually obtain the information and learn what you're hearing. And then to either digest it in a way they're like, oh, like I do or do not want this, rather than like the emotional appeal of like, here, it's right in your face, 30 seconds, or if it's on the news, like you're like engaged with it because it's that level of emotion. Whereas like this is like, no, like let's eliminate all of that. And hopefully the podcasts that you're listening to are of that value and not like, spewing different things out there. Cause there is that, like there's that everywhere, but I think it's finding the right mold and right aspect of things, which can really help.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Yeah, podcasts so cool. Like I
Yeah.
just can't speak highly enough about them, especially as like even this season, like being married and living like 30 minutes, 40 minutes from work.
Yeah.
Like my experience on those drives has been in like just completely changed because one, obviously I'm not watching videos in my car, but like I'm able to fully engage in a podcast and like that's a benefit of one, driving a long time, which is, you know, whatever way you want to interpret that. But for me, I found it as a plus because one, it's quiet time for me.
Yes.
And I can also digest and process something.
Yeah.
And that's a guaranteed time. Like if I didn't have a 30, 40-minute commute, I couldn't guarantee that I would have an hour of quiet time each day to digest what's happening in the world or educate myself. A lot of my podcasts are like kind of self-helpy where it's like creatives talk with other creatives on how to price yourself correctly or blah, blah, blah. And all this stuff that, you know, we kind of preach as Silo. Those are one of my forms of inspiration that keep my creativity flowing.
Yeah.
I mean, and now with Spotify having audiobooks, I'm sorry that you don't have it on your account.
No, what is this? Spotify.
But like all the different books out there that are in audio form now that I can consume like podcasts. I've never been an audiobook guy, but it's trying to get into it because I love podcasts so much now.
Yeah. And it's just a different way to consume that information.
Just podcasts are so cool.
Yeah.
The value of this podcast too started with one, we wanted to be students of it.
Yes.
But then two, we also like use this as a way to spew our own like knowledge.
Yeah. And it serves as like a format of therapy too.
Yeah. I think that's what the biggest thing was is like, sure, we put a lot of stuff out there and it's a lot of work and blah, blah, blah. But this is a lot of work, but wholeheartedly fun for both of us.
Yeah. 100%.
Because it's like two guys just sitting around a table talking. I'm not like having to worry about the editing later. It's like, it's just going to be a long form hangout. And for us to like sit down, and one, it's a bonding activity. And two, it's just like, we do have things to say. And honestly, we aren't just two dudes anymore. Like we've amassed experience.
Two somewhat intelligent dudes talking about stuff that somewhat might interest you.
Yeah, exactly. And now we are dudes that do matter in this world.
That have some level of intelligence.
And look how it's turned. It's because we've actually documented how far we've come from our first episodes, which have been hilarious. And more turning into us hoping to expel knowledge from our 4 years of doing this. Because we can talk from authority on some aspects of what we do. And if we can't, we listen to podcasts to help educate ourselves to go further.
It's a continual process.
I think it's just a really cool circle for us because I really enjoy this so much. Like I can't say it enough. Like I love podcasts, but I love doing these. Because those past interviews that I did, like all last like 2 months that these have been coming out, like it's just been the coolest experience to talk to new people. And I know we started doing that with our Instagram lives that we did every Saturday during 2021.
Saturday night, man.
Dude, that was something else. And
different beast.
It was. That's memory lane right there. Like that's old stuff.
Yeah. And those are some, if we're being honest, like some of our closest friends came from those lives.
Exactly.
Just crazy.
So like to see how far you can come from having conversations with people has been so cool. And I think I've learned so much from just sitting down with people. And the only thing that has changed is that I'm having a conversation, but I'm also recording it for other people to see.
Which is really cool. And you're giving them an opportunity to show or also to speak on and to encourage others and with whatever they may be bringing. And then also to, you know, it's a literally a leg of transformational community because you're literally like it's building up members because you're giving them an opportunity to speak up about something that they may or may not have been able to in the past, which is a huge win.
So I think I heard this really cool quote on Threads maybe, or someone said it, but along the lines of like, community is when you let other people take the microphone or like let other people take the helm of it. Because if you think about it, like you're standing on a soapbox if you're just talking at people.
Yes.
But when you're able to give up the control and like know that someone isn't going to like, you know, go crazy with it, that's when you build that trust. Like you have trust with the person to be able to do that. And that's more of a, you know, a metaphor for something larger.
Yes.
But, you know, community is when you can give up control. Yeah. Basically.
Dang. Quote that right there.
So I thought that was
Make that
really
thing
good.
real right there. That's
But it's and that's so true. I love this whole season with like letting other people come on and just get to know them and let other people get to know them has been super cool, and I hope that people have been touched from them. So I think in the future, just for me, I'm like so in with podcasting at the moment that I want to buy like a full, like good microphones. Like, you know, I've been using this like shotgun guy for a while, and I have one that I've been hanging on to.
Early podcast, you would just hold it.
Yeah, exactly. And I have the little guys that I use sometimes or would wirelessly put on my cameras.
Yes.
But these microphones are pretty cool. Hopefully they sound good. I haven't actually tested them yet.
Oh, cool.
Oopsie, if this turns out bad. But for the most part, like, I just want to invest because I feel like there is room in the local market for businesses to catch up to what's been happening in larger areas, and for businesses to have podcasts that go behind the scenes with either their CEO or marketing team or something to get to know them better. Yeah. And I think that builds trust with, you know, the people that are going to invest in them or whatever. Yes. I mean, for an example, I think Taylor Chip, which is like a cookie company. Yeah. They have one in Lancaster and they're opening one in New York. I think they have a podcast.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, cool. I feel like they're on trend. And I'm like, cool. I love that they're like showing behind the scenes of this cookie business that these people started in their, I think 20s or 30s.
Oh,
like,
wow.
They're like a young couple that's
really cool.
That has, you know, a new store opening up, their second store. So I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
And I think more companies need that. And I want to be able to serve people because I feel like we've gotten, you know, so much experience from it. You know, it's people talking and they're just passionate about it. Like everything else they don't know. They don't know how to set up the cameras or the lights and stuff. Yeah. Or, you know, plan out what to talk about, which is, you know, something you're really good at. And I think there's room in the niche. So I want to invest in my gear to help serve other people better. So that's my future. I think
future right there.
Whatever viewership happens on Silo, sure. I'm so thankful for all the people that listen, but I know there's so many more people that can be influenced and impacted by podcasts. So I want to keep growing.
Especially if it remains in that kind of like local end or like global sphere, because then people get to kind of, I think we're in this era of people want to know what's going on. Some of it may be a little nosy, but on other aspects of it, I think it's an actual truth of like, hey, like, oh, I feel like everybody kind of asks questions, would wonder like, how does Taylor Chip make their cookies? Well, now they can listen to a podcast of how Taylor Chip like began to make their business, where it came from, and hear from people rather than just like reading it from a website, which I think sometimes can become a little interpersonal. Like this is a way that people can be like, oh, I can hear their voices. I know who they are, kind of know the story. And regardless if that's like just the business, like they just have a podcast about it, or a local company is coming through and doing it, I think it provides substantial value.
Yeah. I mean, and two, I think it just like completely brings the curtain like away. Like you probably don't see, you know, whoever's CEO as often as you would. But if you had them on a podcast, one, it's a low barrier to entry for them. They just sit down and talk for an hour. It's just like another meeting. Yeah. But spewing knowledge that will help their social credibility and trust with both their employees and the rest of the world. I feel like that's so necessary when you think of larger mid-ranged like businesses. Like you just need to find a very transparent route to understand the top or like the leadership or whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't get that in scripted videos that tell, you know, a story video of telling what the company is about. It's like, let me sit down with the CEO of this company for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I can help discern if this is, you know, if this is a good person in general, but also like, what's tough about this? What did you do that can educate me to, you know, pick up a habit that you did?
Yeah. And I feel like it almost brings back what like journalism, like that sphere into podcasting, which I think is a unique way, because I think right now the American public at least is faced with news and knowledge that can easily be skewed or misinterpreted or only soundbited in certain ways. And I feel like this, because a lot of times I feel like people feel, regardless, is like it could be scripted, it can't be scripted, or there's so many different perspectives and personalities and the whole 9 yards. But this is a format I think that we talked about earlier, that we want to bring it full circle. Like it knocks down all of those things and literally is like, what do you think? Because this is a person genuinely sitting down and talking about what's going on. And then can also open the conversation up for more. Because if somebody's talking about their business and how it started and they're like, oh my gosh, like they didn't start it because of this or because of that, they wanted to do this, they wanted to do that. And so, but then it also, I think, it almost requires a level of vulnerability from that person, from both people, and which I think is, like you said, builds that trust, continues that kind of cycle, which is incredibly important. Transformational community is huge, and there's books about it. I mean, people go to school for it, so I think it's.
I don't
important.
know anyone who's going to school for community building.
I don't know. Those guys are nerds.
Yeah, they really are nerds.
Bob the Builder.
Yeah. Bob the community builder, loser.
I know, right? Man, Bob the Builder was such a. I forgot about that show until just recently. I mean, I forget I don't know where that conversation came from, but Bob the Builder. There was like Manny, the mechanic. Like there's all those like different like shows.
Bob the Builder universe is expanding.
Yeah, it is, bro. It's a universe, man. And like Fix It Felix from Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh yeah.
There's like so many that are just like their character is like, oh, I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna build it. So I don't know where I got there, but
I mean, another thing that's been countercultural, I think too, is the art of like slowing down and being more present. I feel like you've been going through that season a lot. I know we talked last episode a lot about like taking it slower and what you've discovered. What are some of like the things that you found through podcasts possibly or books that have changed how you perceive things?
I think it's one of the most notable books that I think has honestly changed my perspective on this. A term that has come up, it's called hurry culture. Like we're in this as an American society, especially even I think globally, but I think more so in Western culture is this term called hurry culture, which basically is like this mindless and continual process of like you have to experience everything. You got to do what you got to do to reach the business ladder, and oftentimes that's a result or fault of relationships failing and society moral values and their infrastructures crumbling because we're constantly picking up the pace and ultimately losing on like the integrity and the value of what it takes to put something into place and into practice and the time that it may or may not take. And so as a result, like we have creatives, business people, this hits everybody, like working 40, typically often more than that, 50 plus hours.
Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, I know, right? Which something that I read was about how like productivity and our ability to do things well, there's actually studies of like, what is that time frame? And it's a normal work week, which is like 40 to 50 hours, depending on what your job is. And after you hit that limit, you're really not being more productive, you're actually doing that product at a lesser of quality.
Yeah. It's like diminishing returns after a certain point.
And so we're continuous this, like, I have to work these tumultuous hours. I have to like ignore family to get this done. I think to certain levels that is needed, especially if you're a single parent on all those areas. I think that's not to take away from the reality of a lot of what people suffer and go through. But I think what really is this thing of like what we ruthlessly need to eliminate is this idea that we need to produce more, do more, accomplish more, look at more, do this, do that, and like this continuous, because if we're being honest with ourselves, like, I don't know about you guys and I don't know about you, but like if I'm staring at social media for hours on end, my brain hurts, my body feels blah. I feel like I just wasted 3 hours of my life when I could have read a book. I could have engaged with my wife. I could have learned something new. But instead I was consuming content that may or may not have been actually beneficial. And so some of that process has been like, okay, I'm going to look at the clothes that I have. How much of this clothing actually yields significant value? And I've eliminated so much of my clothing, but in that process, I've engaged with this like mercy, grace, like serving, because, and a humility, because I've been like, oh my gosh, I have so much clothing. I can give this away to people that may need it. And so it's like a simple, mundane task, but it ultimately benefits the community because like you're feeding into like, okay, I can give this to people. Another example is like making my phone dumb. Like I
love this one.
Yeah, it's like, it killed me when I learned it because I was like, this is the stupidest thing ever. But like it has helped me so much because there's studies that go about of like the dopamine addictions that we get from colors from our phones. Like our phones, as much as like we grow up hearing from people like, oh my gosh, the phones are the enemy and all that stuff. There's actual, like there was science behind maybe like 2% of those claims, but like there's actual science now that backs up the fact that like when we look at our phone, we become more addicted to it because the companies that make them make sure that the colors and things that our brains become addicted to them. So a way to kind of eliminate being on my phone and being more present, engaging with conversations, which again continues to feed this culture of community. Because if I'm constantly on my phone, how am I able to listen to the conversation and maybe speak into somebody's life? But I've completely eliminated all color on my phone. So I've eliminated like emails and any sort of work related thing. I've eliminated the internet browsers, like all that kind of stuff. And part of that's some personal journey, but at the same time, it's made me be disgusted at looking at my phone and by default opened me up to more conversation. Like I'm not going to like look at emails for hours. I'm going to like go out and create. It opens my brain up to the capacity to actually create, engage, because not only am I now well rested and engaging in community because now I have the time, but I'm also not like constantly droned out by things that could not help.
Yeah.
And then another aspect of it, something that I've been practicing is like being in silence, like learning what it looks like to eliminate things that are distractions, and kind of just sit in a space where it's like, okay, I'm going to sit in silence, or I'm going to drive and not be focused on 10 million things because it helps my body to feel rested. But also at the same time continues this perpetual cycle of growing up community. Because if I'm eliminating the things that do not provide substantial value, it opens me up to create, but then also to engage in the community more, which if we want, I think, if we're being honest, if we want to help the culture around us, the society around us, the people around us who are dealing with poverty and all of those awful and atrocious things that our culture honestly suffers from, and America, there's epidemics of, is eliminating things that distract us so that we can actually have the reality in front of us. And what would it look like instead of like consuming 3 to 5 hours every day of TikTok content, that we're actually outside walking in, let's say, York City, and we're seeing what's in front of us? Like, it opens us up to more possibility of what we could do. And seeing like, oh, like it could inspire you so much so that you're like, I'm gonna now focus on fixing homelessness. Like it's opportunity rather than like you're limited. So something that we've talked about earlier of like, you want to create, you want to do, you want to continue to feed the fire. Well, what is feeding you? And if you find what is feeding you is not beneficial or is actually hurting you or whatever, fill in the blank, distracting you, it'll prevent you from opening up your opportunity. And like that hurry culture is real and it's present and it's everywhere. But what better way as creatives to do what creatives do and find creative ways to eliminate it. And so,
I mean, I think too, which is all of those insane things. I have so much to learn, first of all, but also like, I think about getting bored. You are never going to be bored if you're constantly stimulated or like on some kind of like dopamine high from watching things. Like I think about like, if you take like cough medicine or, you know, you just like kind of like, you're a little bit like not buzzed. Yeah, exactly. You're like a little buzzed and you're like, no, you can't focus, or like you're in a little bit of just a different state. I mean, sure, your health is like, you know, improved versus like sneezing or whatever at a time. But like, I think about that. I'm like, I really just don't want to do anything once I'm like a little buzzed on cough syrup or whatever. And that's what like TikTok is. I feel like, like I eliminated TikTok maybe like April of this year, and I've seen so many more like focus benefits from it. Like, I watch long form YouTube. I'm not in YouTube shorts. I'm not in reels. I'm not in TikTok, but like to just focus, like even just eliminating TikTok helped me so much. Like it really is just, we can preach on it all the time, but like eliminating those stimulants for you to be able to like realize that you want to do other things. Like it's so easy and fast to do the things that are right in front of you. It's so hard and rewarding to do the things that are not right in front of you. And so to eliminate those things is so cool. I mean, you even talked about like walking slower. I think is something that like is a weird thing for people to think about, but it's a practical. Like all those things just contribute to you having time to explore yourself more even.
I agree. And I think even to come off what you're saying about stimulants, like if you think about it, stimulants, there's no like, you don't need to take them, you know, like stimulants are things that create like an increase and boost in certain areas. So like you think about bodybuilding, like that's such a culture, like, oh, I'm going to take this stimulant or I'm going to do this so that my muscles improve. But then like 30, 40 years, you hear people like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? My body is now suffering. If you put it in that lens of like the more like stimulants are only, if we put it in this way, like stimulants are short-term pleasure, long-term loss. Same with like, if we put it in the lens of our hurry culture, it's short-term pleasure, long-term loss, because rather than like, instead of watching or doing those things, like you said, like you've eliminated the 20 like plus TikToks that you could have watched by watching an hour-long educational, inspiring video that created more opportunity for more. It's not necessarily saying that these things are bad. It's just saying like where are your framework in?
Sure. I mean, screen time is the same at that point, you know? But the gain or the introspection that could have been had is, you know, is a lot.
It's incredible.
Better.
And like, even like you said, of like walking slower, driving the speed limit, like people get so angry. Like fury. I think I think that's another epidemic, is like this anger. Like people are just so like underlyingly frustrated, angry, upset. Everybody's yelling at each other. There's like, it's just everywhere. It's this root of just anger and anger and anger and anger. And we see videos of road rage, of just like people yelling and like screaming, and honestly looking at a fellow human being with less respect than like a piece of corn. Like it's not good. And
Specifically corn.
Specifically corn,
Okay,
you know,
good.
which has no nutritional value. But so
all those corn lovers out there,
know, right?
just ruined.
But if we think about it in that sphere, like what it would look like if you drove like not under the speed limit, but let's say like within 5 minutes or 5 miles, like instead of 50 at a 35, you're driving 40. Like it allows for you to be not only more aware, but then if somebody is right in your rear, then you're like, oh my gosh, that was me. And now I know what it feels like. It makes you kind of, again, be more introspective, but then also slow down enough to be like, oh my gosh, I would have gotten so upset with somebody driving this. Now I am that person getting that same action. And so there's an incredible amount of, like, don't just take like my or your word for it. Like there's so many like scientific studies out there that prove the importance of these things.
Yeah. Where have you seen that in your life? Like we've talked about these practices, you say that there's studies, but like down and dirty, where have you seen that affect you?
That's a good question.
You can take as long as you want to answer it, so you can have some introspection time.
I know. I think if we're riding on like the previous kind of episodes and things of just like ideas of, I was so stressed and anxious and worried and filled with this like just uncertainty. But then as soon as I began to eliminate these distractions and engaging in these practices, like actually getting 8 hours of sleep, and watching that like stockpile over time, like it literally like changed my life. Like I began to realize like, oh my gosh, like it opens me up for so much more. Like I can, like we both are Christian, and it opens me up for more opportunity to engage with God, like to hear his voice, to experience those things in community rather than like checking my phone every 20 minutes because I want to see a text or I need to see an email. But then one that really killed me was like driving the speed limit. I didn't know how much I sped until like I realized, oh my gosh, I need to drive 25 here and I'm driving 50. Like I need to slow down. And it's like sitting in silence. Like I've become addicted to it. Like I love just sitting in silence and hearing what's around me. It's made me become, I think, more human rather than digital. And if we want, I think, to change community and be transformational and to love our neighbor as ourselves, we need to eliminate the distractions that prevent us from doing those things and realize that we're human beings that can only process a certain amount of things every day. And if we constantly overload that, then we I think honestly, we fail at what we're supposed to do on what our job is on this earth. And so I think for me, it just made me like incredibly, it just changed who I was. Cause I was like, cause none of these practices are inherently like, have a like stigmatism to, you know, it's just like simple stuff that's like, seems really silly and childish and funny, but help you to slowly over time recognize things, which is, I think, important.
Yeah. I mean, just at the end of the day, going back to the work week. Like if you were to work 70 hours, you're not doing those 70 hours well.
No, you may be doing like 40, 50 of them.
Sure.
But then that extra 20, what are you doing? Like for majority of the time, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm still here. I'm working. Right. I'm frustrated. I'm angry.
And even if you are trying to perform at your highest, it's not physically possible for you to be 100% for 7 hours, 70 hours. Like part of the work cycle is finding rest and finding places to slow down so that when you do switch on to the work mode, you're able to do it with perceived excellence or to the best of your ability.
Yes.
And being able to segment those, like, I'm going to rest really well during these hours and work really hard during these hours, like is a game changer to not be constantly on and worrisome and stressed and everything else.
And I think it also goes to say, like, for those, like, I think it's to each their own, like, each person can find rest and slowness and different things. I know it's difficult for, like we said earlier, of like a single parent trying to manage 3 kids and work a full-time job. Finding rest is so incredibly hard. But it's something that I think if you don't value it and don't put in the hard work in the front end, you're not going to be able to see or reap the benefits in the back end. And I think for those that have to do insane amount of work, you know, to make a living, I think it's finding moments where as an individual, you can, like, what would it look like? I think anybody can spare 5 minutes. Like, what would it look like to, like, sit, take a break, put away things for just 5 minutes, like regain your bearings a little bit.
Find a structure that makes you make less decisions too.
Exactly.
There's probably decisions that you don't have to make every day.
Yeah.
Like that you can either get rid of or automate or figure out some way that, like you said with clothes, I'm the same way. I'm like, I wear the same few sets of outfits every week because it just eliminates what I have to stress about in the morning.
Yes.
Like you could, you know, it's totally fair if you want to set out your outfit the day before or the night before, you know, but imagine waking up and your closet is everything matches each other kind of stuff. I feel like that's kind of like our wavelength of it.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Gavin, I want you to close this out in whatever way that you want. I just threw this on you right now, but I want you to give us. Yeah.
I think if anything, as a creative, challenging you to look at what you do on the day to day and kind of assess, be introspective, tap in silo community and creative communities. Tap in. I think whatever that looks like for you as an individual, tap in and connect and engage and support and do all of the above. Yeah, that was my outro.
Yeah.
That was outro with the bro.
Outro with the bro.
Yeah.
Happy holidays, y'all.
Who doesn't have a fro?
No, bro, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a good holidays.
Yeah.
And don't forget to
butter your bread.
Or your biscuits. Butter your biscuits whenever you want.
Yeah, whenever you want. Just slather them suckers up with.
You have my permission. You have my permission and Gavin's permission. Butter your biscuits as much as you want. If that's a full stick of butter for one slice of biscuit, you do it.
Yes.
Because you deserve it.
Yep.
And if you think you don't,
then butter your pancakes.
Next level.
Yeah.
Do you actually put butter in your pancakes?
Yeah.
Waffles?
Sometimes.
Waffles.
So it depends.
Do you do waffles?
But so pancakes for sure, because I feel like it increases the taste. I don't know why.
You need it for the pancakes specifically.
Yeah, especially if you like put them like right in between the stack. Oh, you get the layers of butter.
Okay.
But waffles, I don't think I do it that much.
How often do you have waffles? We'll ending on that.
I don't think I've had waffles in like a hot minute.
I need like a month number, please.
Oh, it's probably been like 5 to 6 months, if not more.
Silo, we need you to tap in.
Get waffles.
Is that too long for Gavin to have waffles.
It is, especially like if it's like a cinnamon sugar like.
Well, that is like a must.
Yeah. French toast though.
Well, yeah, that's next level. That is top tier breakfast,
bro. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, why I wonder where waffles came from.
What Belgium?
Belgium.
Totally.
Maybe Eggo.
Yeah. Oh, Eggo. Yeah, that place.
That place. It's pretty dope.
Silo Tap In is 5 months. A logical amount of time to go without eating waffles. Let us know. Peace out.
Bye. Nice job.
Good job.